Hello, billionaires. I'm Ivy League legacy of Billionaires for Bush, and this is the Big Business Minute, where the free market runs wild. It has been a busy news cycle, and just in time, with the president's numbers in a tailspin, Karl Rove himself couldn't have planned such a perfect onslaught of newsworthy events to help distract the nation from Iraq, the Downing Street memos, Cindy Sheehan, and Valerie Plame. But you know how we like it here at the Big Business Minute. No justice? No problem. Speaking of justice, confirmation hearings for John Roberts began this week, and senators are asking the big question. If confirmed, would Roberts keep the gold stripes Rehnquist added to the robe? My $2 billion, that gold braid is a perfect accessory while you're consolidating executive power and writing laws of, by, and for the corporations. See you on the bench, Johnny. Of course, the real story this week is the devastation on the Gulf Coast. Billionaires, it is with great sorrow that I report that Trent Lott lost his entire multi-million-dollar waterfront mansion to the flood. I just want to say, Trent, we're with you. Reporting live from Trent Lott's estate is our own Monet Oliver DePlace. Monet, what's it like down there?
Ivy, the devastation here is truly unbelievable. The storm spared nothing. Trent's yachts, the Magnolia Grove, even his life-size statue of Strom Thurmond, all gone. And the suffering isn't limited to Trent Lott's house. Our friends, the Vanderbilts, have a place down here, and they told me that as the waters rose, 3 of their 7 insolent butlers quit, forcing them to live on nothing but prime rib and fine cognac for 5 days. But in times of crisis, President Bush is always there for his buddies, and he moved quickly to assess the damage, assuring Lott that the reconstruction of his mansion is a top priority.
In fact, Billionaires for Bush has already heeded the president's call and launched a Rebuild Trent Lott's House Fund.
I know. Who says we don't do our fair share? But here's where it gets really good, Ivy. Thanks to Joe Alba, former FEMA head turned lobbyist, and Dick Cheney, the man with the world's smallest Rolodex, Halliburton, the Shaw Group, and Bechtel have already secured some massive no-bid contracts in the Gulf Coast. If Iraq is any measure, Halliburton should have full power to 20% of the coast by the year 2010, and at the cost of only $30 or $40 billion.
Fantastic. I can't wait to see my quarterly report. But I have to say I'm a little worried that the public is catching on. The president's poll numbers are at an all-time low, and Katrina has exposed some of the nastier truths about poverty in America. What can we do to help the president and the nation in these dangerous times?
I'm glad you asked. We all know the president always falls flat trying to look compassionate. This isn't 9/11, and Americans aren't coming together like they did back then. We've learned from this. And right now, our advisors are meeting with the president, devising ways to rally the country before the people start asking too many questions.
That's so important. What do you have in mind?
We're urging the president to launch a full-scale war on weather, declaring the southern Atlantic a tropic of evil, harboring weapons of mass destruction. We can send forces to the region and take this fight to the enemy that is Mother Nature. We've got to act before she can strike Americans here at home.
And find a way for the money to go straight into the pockets of the corporations who put him in office?
Yep.
Now, does Bush feel at all responsible, given that his defunding of levee upkeep projects and scrapping of wetland preservation policy made this flood much worse than it might have been?
Well, it's true that W ignored the explicit warnings of scientists, but he had an extremely profitable war in the other Gulf to fund. And as for wetlands, sure, they dramatically reduce flood surges, but thanks to our president, they're now only protected if they're somehow related to interstate commerce. That's just the kind of science we like, profit-based.
So, Monet, let me ask you, I'm normally able to completely ignore the suffering of anyone who's not in my tax bracket. But with Katrina, the destruction has been so overwhelming, the devastation so terrible, even I found myself wondering if we shouldn't reach out to those less fortunate. Any thoughts?
Now don't get crazy, Ivy. We mustn't waver just because a natural disaster shines a spotlight on how successful we've been in our campaign to starve the beast of government and widen the gulf between the poor and the super rich. It's still a class war, and we're still winning. As for reaching out, Some of my top prospectors are already surveying the low-income housing districts. They're authorized to cut poor folks a one-time whopping check for $10,000 for their flooded homes. Once raised, that same property is going to turn a 6 or 7 or even 8-figure profit for us. If that's not compassion, I don't know what is. Wait, I'm getting some late-breaking news. Speaking of compassion, I've just received word that Bush has named the man who will oversee all recovery efforts in the Gulf Coast. And that man, that man is Karl Rove. Doesn't get any better than this, Ivy. Ivy?
Thanks, Monet. Stay dry down there and have some Grand Cuvée for me. Well, billionaires, that does it for this week's Big Business Minute. Check out billionairesforbush.com for all the latest billionaire news, and be sure to tune in next week for my exclusive report on cutting taxes on the rich in times of fiscal crisis, entitled Abolishing the Dynasty Tax, Now More Than Ever. I'm Ivy League Legacy of Billionaires for Bush, reminding you that we're all in this together. Sort of.